Welcome to Global Tax Talk. I'm Will Morris. An evolution of the global tax landscape is occurring right before our eyes. Brad Silver, PwC's Deputy Global Tax Leader, is here with us to discuss a few key issues that are impacting business and how companies are responding. So welcome, Brad.
Thanks, Will. Great to be with you today.
Good. Okay, let's dive straight in, and let's start with everybody's favorite topic, which is Pillar 2. And the impact on the tax function, which is expected to be absolutely enormous. The compliance landscape is changing faster than anybody has ever imagined. It's getting more complex than ever before, and staying compliant can be a huge burden. At the same time, there are these tax talent shortages that everybody's talking about, and tax is struggling to deliver like the tax analysis that the C-suite needs to hear. So how are tax functions, at least from the clients that you talk to, how are tax functions actually grappling with this time of enormous change?
Yeah, that's a great question, Will. Our clients have been grappling with this and are in the middle of grappling with this complex issue and have been for a while. And I think that everyone's been preparing for the Pillar 2 wave to hit, and it's almost here, right? In less than 30 days, a number of territories will be bringing into force the Pillar 2 rules.
Right.
And we expect that that'll impact over 8,000 entities, over half of which are outside the U.S. And from what we're seeing, companies are really tackling this in a multifunctional way with a unified approach. And those that are doing that are really ahead of the curve. Pillar 2, as you know, is not just a tax issue.
Nope.
It's much broader than that. It impacts a number of corporate stakeholders. So what we're seeing at our clients is that, yes, it's starting within the tax function, but the tax folks are working with the financial reporting controllers, with their IT and systems colleagues, with their HR colleagues, really to do a number of different things. Companies are trying to get their arms around operational readiness. So how is Pillar 2 and all the reporting requirements going to impact a number of their processes involving their people, the reporting process itself, data, and technology.
Right.
Data is a big one.
Yep.
A lot of companies are struggling with getting their arms around the data sources, how to manage the data. And so what we're seeing is companies stepping back and really taking a hard look at their data strategy. Further, companies are really looking at modeling as well,
Right.
and try to figure out the impact of all these rules and to see whether there's any opportunities to plan in the course of their normal events, really trying to address Pillar 2 opportunities. And then finally, we're seeing companies getting ready for the compliance requirements and really working closely with their financial reporting controllership shops and really trying to figure out how to get ready for the reporting of all this.
Great, that's great. So an enormously complex situation. Let's sort of move on from there, not totally unrelated. The global tax transparency trend is clearly headed only in one direction, and it's increasing rapidly. And companies are now beginning to deal with the prospect of public country-by-country reporting, for example, but not just that, but also ESG reporting, sustainability reporting, things like the CSRD, Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive from the EU. Now, looked at positively, this actually, with all this reporting, companies also have the opportunity to actually tell a story about what they do, about the positive impacts that they make, and hopefully thereby to build trust. So do you think, not just at the tax level, but actually at the C-suite level, is this beginning to get attention there from what you're hearing?
There's no doubt about that, Will. We clearly, as you mentioned, that the trend is only increasing in terms of transparency. I think it's fair to say that we live in a transparent world. And that tax doesn't escape that. And the more that tax is being incorporated into all the the sustainability reporting requirements that you referred to, CSRD, stuff coming out of OECD, all the World Economic Forum measures of stakeholder management. We're seeing tax more and more in those requirements. So it's definitely getting much more attention at the C-suite level.
Right.
We definitely, we PwC have been conducting a tax transparency and sustainability reporting survey for the last few years.
Yep.
The last one that we did covers this past year, and we've expanded it to cover over 260 companies in the U.S. and eight non-U.S. Countries. And what that survey is telling us is that, in fact, more and more companies are doing more in the way of transparency.
Yep.
We're seeing it more in the qualitative reporting around their risk management policies, their risk appetite, et cetera. Less so in the quantitative parts. And we're also seeing a variation of reporting across these 9 countries. And we suspect, and it's not a big leap to say, that that's due to the fact that we don't have standardized
Right.
reporting mechanics.
Not yet.
Not yet, not yet. And so I would be remiss if I didn't mention that PwC is one of those that are doing more in the way of tax transparency. As you know, we've recently updated and released our revised Global Tax Code of Conduct. And we're very proud of that. We're the only Big Four firm to have a global tax code of conduct. We last updated it almost 8 years ago, and we recognize that so much has changed in the global tax landscape and all the trends around transparency that we felt that it was appropriate to update the document.
Right.
And we are very proud, and we look at it as a framework for ethical behaviors that are expected of all of our professionals. And we really look at it as a way to enhance the quality of what we do, drive integrity, drive accountability, and a speak-up culture. And so we're very proud of that. And then finally, I would also be remiss if I didn't mention that in the latest Edelman survey on trust and climate, there was a striking conclusion, a striking result from that survey most recently, and the sort of the headline is that businesses are now less trusted than government and NGOs, and that's a troubling statistic. That's a troubling trend.
Yep.
I think the specific statistic was that CEOs in the area of trusted, sort of what's the level of trust among CEOs on the topic of climate, and it's only at 36%.
Right.
And that's down a bunch of percentage points from the last time it was surveyed, but it's clearly something that our clients are keeping an eye on and will need to deal with going forward.
No, right. And I think, just to echo back to you, one of the points you've been making, it's not just enough to have numbers, and it's not just enough to have rules for that matter. It's actually proactively telling the story about what you do and what you believe in. And I think hopefully we'll see more of that as people lean into it.
Agreed.
So let's carry on just on the sustainability stuff for a moment, and go a little deeper into one aspect of it. So lots of green taxes, incentives, credits, that type of stuff going on around the world. One of the things that companies are struggling with, though, is like this fundamental question of what is our cost of carbon? And I just wondered, what are you seeing? How are you seeing companies think about that? And indeed, could companies be missing opportunities in this area to think about that?
Yeah, it's a great question, Will, and it's certainly one of those areas that is evolving and evolving quickly. You mentioned all the green taxes and the credits and incentives, and that's certainly something that we're seeing more and more. We know that governments are trying to figure out how to incentivize companies and individuals to conduct more sustainable practices, and so we are seeing a plethora of tax legislation to try to incentivize behavior. We just heard the COP28 session in Dubai.
Yep.
A big topic there was around financing for all the changes that need to be made, and I suspect, and it's kind of stating the obvious, but certainly taxes will be looked at as an area of funding for all of that. When it gets to the hidden cost of carbon and all of our daily doings, it's a tough one, Will. This This is very challenging. Certainly, we see that supply chain emissions make up the majority of a company's overall emission, and it's very difficult to track.
Yep.
It's hard to measure. It's hard to track, and so what we're seeing is companies really spending the time trying to analyze, trying to understand, trying to track all that cost. Certainly, it impacts profitability. It impacts competitiveness. We're not seeing a lot of companies at this point really have the sort of the successful
Sure.
answer here, and I think people are really still trying to figure it out. But certainly, as companies are measuring the hidden cost of carbon, tracking it certainly represents opportunities
Yep.
for companies to get ahead of the curve on that topic.
So that's a great point, but it's a difficult one, because one of the reasons why it's difficult is because there are currently no standards. So people complain about standards, but they also complain about no standards. So one would imagine in this area that we'll hear more about that. Okay, so one last question, and this is another of our favorite topics, but in the sort of the rapidly changing, evolving landscape. This is about AI and issues around upskilling and culture. And business leaders, and indeed we, have talked a lot about the potential for AI and all of the great things it can do. But at the same time, employees, not unnaturally, view this as a slightly more complex issue. So how are clients, again, in your experience, working through this to sort of help solve this disconnect inside of their organization?
It's a great topic, and it's hard to avoid the topic of AI in any conversation these days. It's so prevalent in our lives, and I think it's a wonderful thing. I come from a background of advising technology industry clients, and so I'm all about innovation, and I think this is just AI is another. I view it as another important emerging technology. Certainly, it's going to have wider and deeper and broader impact than other emerging technologies, but it's certainly one that will yield exciting benefits. And oftentimes with innovation, it's all about mindset. And so, to your point, how do companies help their employees through this? There's a lot of upskilling that needs to be done. There's a lot of getting comfortable with gaining new skills, new ways of working. Certainly, it represents an area that can make all of our lives easier. It's certainly a threat at some level. And what we're seeing, and in fact, PwC, we're on that journey also, right? We recognize that this is relatively new, certainly evolving quickly. Nobody, in our view, nobody has the answers at this point. We're in the early stages of this journey. But as an organization, what we're doing is really trying to understand kind of what it means for our people, for our clients. We're really working on governance models to make sure that we're doing AI responsibly, and that all of our people have access to training, to really figuring out new skills that they'll need. Right. If you think about AI, there are definitely unique skills. Like we're going to need to get good at asking questions. We're going to need to get better, at asking questions. No commentary on your interviewer style there. But certainly the topic of prompt engineering is going to be really relevant. And so we're doing all sorts of things to help our people really get comfortable with the new technology. And we're excited about the application of it all. And again, it's one of those things that is pervasive throughout organizations. And so we'll be keeping our close eye on what it means for all of us.
Well, Brad, this has been an incredibly rich set of comments. Thank you so much for joining us. And by the way, I'm never going to believe you again when you tell me you're unprepared. So thanks so much for being here.
Appreciate it.
And thank you all for joining us. And tune in again so that you stay global tax ready.